All right, if you look at this inverted pyramid, you can see how the dissemination of knowledge discovered in science gets spread to eventually to general public. Let's start at the very tip of this inverted pyramid. It says specialized knowledge more authoritative. Okay, why? Because this is where researchers actually conduct experiments or make observations, and then when they have concluded their studies, they write things up and they send these manuscripts to academic journals. And a lot of these academic journals are peer reviewed, meaning you send the results and the methods and all these things. They're called manuscripts before they get published. You send them to the journals, and the journals actually have a panel of peers, meaning other experimenters and researchers who are knowledgeable enough to evaluate the validity and the credibility of these manuscripts. So they're often called peer edited scholarly journal articles. So it goes through a very scientifically rigorous process for any manuscript to be published in these prestigious journals. Something like New England Journal of Medicine would be the ultimate academic journal in medicine. So, after, let's say, you're a researcher, you've done many years of research, and each time you concluded an experiment, you've written this up and you actually got it published in scholarly journals. And after you've done that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, you have enough material there to put together into a book. So now you understand why academic journals are really the hottest off the griddle, if you will, compared to scholarly books, because it's also the scholarly journals are more cutting edge, more current. Scholarly books take a little longer to write. And then the governments actually find out. So let's say the government wants to give guidelines about nutrition, they would go into research, right? So this really cutting edge, really complicated material becomes useful in a lot of different places. And then they go to specialized magazines, for example, magazines that doctors read, right? So if there's some medical research, New England Journal of Medicine published something about Alzheimer's, and the doctors who are treating senior citizens should be informed about those things, right? So they go to probably scholarly books, but if they don't have enough time to read scholarly books, they'll go to summaries, basically, like digest, specialized magazines that doctors read, but not necessarily scholarly. They don't go into that, the methodology of the research and stuff like that. And then general interest magazines and newspapers, these are things like the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Time Magazine, and these places where people who are just a little bit interested in, let's say, you have a father who's suffering from Alzheimer's, you would want to read about this, right? Or General Public Scientific American is another good one. It's somewhere between specialized and general interest. And then encyclopedia is a little easier and simpler. And then these days, a lot of this information gets really dumbed down to a post on Facebook. So you can, and then your friend will share a link to a Facebook post and say, check out, dude, there's this new information about Alzheimer's. Isn't this kind of relevant to your father's condition? Do you understand how if you go from the tip of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid, the information gets simpler, more understandable, but at the same time it gets diluted in its scientific rigor. But general public can understand it. So once you understand this, you should understand that when I say that the research review one should be based on journalistic sources, that's the second tier from the top, which the information contained in journalistic sources is easier for you to understand. So it's almost like going into a cave deeper and deeper. I want you to go in on the shallow end, which is journalistic sources. You've done that. And when you read those sources, you also saw names of scholars, right? So that kind of pointed to, see, this is where the gold is. So you go dig deeper and deeper and actually reach the original sources, right? So because you have primed yourself with journalistic sources, you are more than ready to read academic journals that are really dense to read. But because you have had that preparation, you're ready to read it. So that's the process of your research. That's why I want research review 1 is from journalistic sources, research review 2 to be from academic sources. Now, okay, this is not relevant at this point, but I want you to think about how when you actually write your papers, so you're deep down in the cave and you found the gold, which is academic sources, right? And then you're actually bringing this gold out, but you're not going to bring the whole vein of gold. It's impossible. So you have to translate it and translate it into the kind of language that that I and your classmates can understand. That's your research paper. Does that make sense? So think of yourself as a gold miner going in from the shallow end to the deep end to get the truth, the gold nuggets, and then bring these things out and present the gold in the kind of in the forms that your colleagues, your classmates can understand. So it could be like a gold ring.